So we are going to start in just a minute. I'm just getting this set up and then we will go. And maybe some others will join us. Thank you guys for making time for this late on a eve of a holiday. All right, I'm going to share my screen for you guys on Zoom and for the people here in the office. Does everybody... Oh, Priyanka came back. All right, can everybody on Zoom see my screen? And do you see the letters at the end of the word commitment? Can you see the letters? Okay, good. So I'm blocked, but I'm going to try to hide that for my folks in the room. Okay, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. It's late on the edge of a long weekend, so I'm glad you guys chose to spend a little time with me talking about buyer commitment. So before we get into it, I'd like anybody to unmute or in the room, what made you interested in this material? What do you want to learn? How to get a buyer's commitment? Anything specific?
Get into the path.
Huh?
Get into the path, with the client.
Get into the path with the client. Jack, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I fail on getting a couple interest clients, so I totally want to get the whole process, how to lock them in, and also want to learn more what will be a realtor's value to the client to attract them to get us help them their deal.
Perfect. That's what we're going to talk about. Absolutely great. That's perfect. This is one of two classes I teach on realtor value. The other one is called features and benefits of client relationship. But this one is about commitment. So let's dig right in. The first thing I want to say is that when we think about buyers, it is a requirement that you have an agreement with the buyer before you show them property. I make a point of this is because before August of 2024, it was not required. Anybody could call you and say, show me 27 Main Street, and you could go show it to them. They did not have to make any commitment to you, and you didn't have to make any commitment to them. This buyer agency agreement is a two-way contract. This is not a class on the agreement, but the important thing to know is that the agreement is required, both parties sign it, and it protects you and it protects them. So that's one thing. The second thing I want to talk about is this idea of preparation. You want to kind of set the table for the conversation you're going to have with your client at the meeting. You want to be prepared for it. You're going to want to establish your professional standard. What is okay with you? What is not okay with you? We're going to talk about some of the things to think about in establishing a professional standard. You're going to want to promote and talk about key elements of this buyer agency agreement at your meeting and be able to answer your clients' questions about them. And you're going to want to be able to have conversations about issues that are going to be important to cover in this conversation, right? So a lot of people think, oh, I just want to work with sellers. And, we always teach that it's better to work with sellers in a way because you get buyers from working with sellers. And therefore, from building a business model point of view, you really want to focus on getting listings because it'll lead to buyer opportunities and that'll expand your business. But I would say that doesn't mean you should ignore buyers. I was just talking with a lender partner of mine last week, and he was telling me the story about this successful agent in Walnut Creek that he works with, who is really struggling right now because she's always pursued sellers and has never worked with buyers. She's always farmed that out, referred it out, whatever, and she's struggling because now there are a lot of sellers and no buyers for her own listings, right? She doesn't know how to work with buyers, so it's a struggle for her. So one of the things I want you to think about is that buyers have different needs from you than sellers do. It's a different relationship, okay? And I also want you to think about the fact that if you serve your buyers well, you're going to get another deal out of it when they sell the house. Over the past 5 years, I've probably done at least half my business of people that I sold them the house and now they want to. I sold them the house when they were buyers and now they want to sell it and move elsewhere. Sometimes I get two deals. I help them sell it and buy the next place, right? So if you serve the buyer well and stay in touch with them, they will remember you, especially if they thought you did a good job, which of course you're going to do. The other thing is, you guys weren't here last year, but there was all this turmoil. There was all this turmoil in the industry about, what's going to happen. This legal settlement means that buyers are going to have to pay their agents directly, and maybe they won't want to, and blah blah blah. So the upshot is, it's a year later, and we're back. Even though we have new paperwork we use, nothing has changed. Sellers are still paying for their the agent that represents the buyers of their home in most cases, especially in the average to lower price points. Okay? Does anyone have any idea why sellers have not had any problem with continuing to pay for the agent that represents the buyer? Why don't sellers have a problem with that?
Because they're losing the money.
No, they're losing money. They're paying the buyer commission as well as their agent's commission. So they're losing money, right? If I represent somebody as a seller and I charge them 3%, that's 3% pay off the gross, right, of the sale. But if a buyer agent asks them to pay 3% or 2.5%, then it's 5 or 5.5% or 6%. Why do sellers say, okay, I'll still pay that? No.
Because we are finding something that they really are interested in.
We're talking about the seller.
Oh, yeah.
Why does a seller still want to pay for the buyer's agent? Anyone on Zoom have a guess?
You
Well,
want
it's
to
not
get rid of
because-
the house.
Yeah.
Okay, one at a time. Let's start with
Yeah.
Jamie.
Okay. Well, it's not because they're getting all this money because they're selling their house, right? So
But
they
they're
have,
giving up money because
well,
they're
yeah,
going
but
to
they're
pay.
getting millions of dollars.
Well, maybe it depends on the market, but let's just suppose
Right.
it's a $3 million house in Palo Alto just for a minute. Yeah, they're making a lot of money, so they're not greedy, is what you're saying, but that's not really the
Right.
reason.
Yeah.
Adele, do you have a thought?
Yes, they want to get over with the transaction. You want to do it faster
And
and move to another house.
I understand. Why is it going to be faster if they pay for the buyer's agent?
So you have a client for them.
I think
He
you're
have
on the
some
right
people to
track.
buy.
So the reason is, guys, is that if I am meeting with a seller and the seller says, I don't want to pay for the buyer's agent, there will be buyer's agents and buyers who say, I don't want to look at that house. I don't want to pay my agent directly. So I don't want to even go look at the house if I have to pay the agent myself. If I have to pay the agent myself, I don't want to look at the house. Therefore, I'm going to ask the seller to pay. And if they won't pay, I'll go on to the other property. Okay, so sellers don't want to limit. Now, this is what Adele was getting at. They don't want to limit the pool of buyers available so they can sell the house fast. They want the maximum number of buyers available. And if their agent has to go tell all these buyers that, oh, don't, we're not going to pay for you, we're not going to pay the agent, then those buyers may skip that house. They'll go look at a different house that afternoon. And maybe they'll only come back to it if they have time or if they don't find what they want. So that is why nothing has changed. It used to be that when you negotiated with a seller, you would sign something called a listing agreement. And the listing agreement would say, you're going to pay me 3% and you're going to pay the agent that brings the buyer 3%. By the way, these percentages are not broker standards or anything. This is just a conversation. You're all some of you from different offices. So I'm not recommending anything. We're just talking high level, rough numbers. So if it was 3 and 3, the seller would sign at the sign of the list, time of signing the listing, they would say 6%. You would go into these appointments, and as a listing agent, you would negotiate down from 6%, usually giving up the other side's money before your own, right? Now, your deal with the seller is 3% or 2.5%, and the buyer's agent the seller's not making any commitment up front to pay the buyer's agent. So you could see that you might have a multi-offer scenario when the market is hot, where the buyer says, listen, I'll pay my own agent 2.5% if it'll help me get this house over someone else. And as listing agents, we go back to the seller and we say, here's how much you're going to net. Here's how much you're going to net. Here's what they're asking for. They want you to pay their agent. You're going to net 20,000 less than if you do this other offer where they're going to pay their own agent the same sale price. So that's why it's all negotiable now. But sellers still leave them open on the table to take offers from people who are representing buyers so that the buyer get paid. So if you're a buyer's agent, the form where you talk about how much you're going to get paid is the buyer representation agreement, which we talked about on the previous slide. And when your buyers sign that, they are making a commitment to pay you if the seller won't pay you. So that agreement with you and the buyer might be for 2.5% or 3% or 3.25%, whatever it is. And then your buyer may choose to write an offer where they ask for the seller to pay some of that money or all of it so that they don't have to directly pay it themselves. So anyway, it's all more or less the way it was before the big lawsuit in 2024. So I want you guys to think about how are you going to be ready to meet with these folks. Okay, so I call this setting the table. This isn't even before, this is before you meet and sit down with them. There are 3 things I want you to do before you meet with them that will help you to have powerful meetings that are compelling for those buyers. First, establish your value proposition. You should know before you go into a meeting with any buyer about your own value. Why should they work with you? There's a lot of agents out there chasing business. They may be interviewing other agents. You should already know your 1 or 2 things that your secret sauce. So we try to help you get this sorted out in the new agent prerequisite assignment. You all have them. Even if you're brand new to real estate and right out of high school, you still have them. It might be a language skill that most other agents or some other agents don't have. It could be other business experience that is compelling in property management or real estate sales in another country, right? Or whatever. It might be something associated with the team, the brokerage you're with, or the team you're on in the brokerage. There's all kinds of things. Me and your mentor will help you to establish your value proposition, but it's critical. You don't want to be just like everybody else, okay? The second thing is you want to be clear about what your services are. So you could actually put that as part of your presentation. I'm going to do this for you. And what's popular in other parts of the country, I haven't seen it too much here yet, is a tiered pricing. Mr. Buyer, if I do this, you pay me 3%. If I just do this and this and this and this, it's 2.5%. So you could do tiered pricing. Just remember, you can't go below the brokerage minimum on the commission, right? So you clarify your service offering, and your service offering includes the boundaries, which we're going to talk a little bit about. People will not say, oh, I don't want to work with you because you have a boundary of what hours you're available. They are going to respect you for it. Okay. They're going to say, wow, this is a true professional. One of the reasons why some real estate agents struggle is because they don't come across as being professional, either the way they come off with their appearance, or also because they don't have any boundaries or standards. So it's very important. I also make the argument that having standards and boundaries is good for your mental health. And then you also want to develop your buyer consultation. So if you decide that you're going to go meet with them for a coffee at Starbucks, before you go to the meeting, you should know exactly what you want to accomplish. Okay, I have a 3-part recommendation for this. The first part is a needs assessment. The second part is your value proposition. And the third part is reviewing the sales contract. Those are my recommended 3 things you should do. But you may want to be more digital or more interactive. Bring a laptop with a display so you can show them slides. Maybe you're an old-fashioned person. You just want to have printed media to share with them. It will make you look professional if you bring materials. So, some more things about that consultation. If you want to win at these meetings, you have to be a good listener. Okay? Your cell phone is off. No sound, turned upside down or off. You are listening to them. Now, you might not want to turn it off because you might want to have the opportunity to look something up for them quickly if they ask. But it should not distract you. Okay? You want to be looking at them in the eyes, and as long as that's culturally appropriate. And then you want to listen carefully to the words they are saying and the things they are not saying. With the second thing coming from curiosity. You know, one of the biggest problems that agents have and that we have in the world in general is that we are not the slightest bit curious about other people. So we just jump to assumptions and presumptions. Be curious. Don't assume. Ask lots of questions. Avoid presumption. And it's not necessarily judgment, but you might make a presumption that because a person is in a wheelchair, that they don't want a 2-story home. Don't do that. Talk to them. Ask them what kind of house they want and what their needs are. And avoid making a presumption. Just because of your own bias or your own perspective on how they appear to you or they speak to you. Another presumption is that just because a person is nonverbal, that they're not very intelligent. That's completely false as well. And those are my 2 favorites because I serve clients with disabilities as my main gig in real estate. So those are 2 that come up. But it also comes up in terms of fair housing. Do not ever tell a buyer that X neighborhood is better for them than Y neighborhood. Let them tell you what they like and don't like about the neighborhoods they're interested in. It's your job to talk about the property and to tell them about different neighborhoods, but never steer them. You could get into big trouble. It's called steering. It's a violation of fair housing law. Why do we steer? Not because we're bad people, but because we are presumptuous and we aren't curious. We don't ask questions, right? So through these 3 things, active listening, being curious, avoiding presumptions, and the stuff I talked about on the previous page, establishing a value proposition, clarifying your service offering, and developing a consultation, you will show your professionalism. You will show it. You don't need to say, I'm a professional because I'm wearing a nice tie today. You won't need to do that, or a nice dress or whatever, because it's just gonna come shining through by doing these things. Any questions so far? Okay. Let's talk about professional standards. I wrote down a bunch of questions that come up from over and over again in my teaching and in my career. What are your hours of availability? I strongly urge you to set hours for your real estate business. Do not be the kind of agent that's taking a call at 10 o'clock at night, unless you're in the middle of a hot negotiation. Okay, if you are not in the middle of a hot negotiation in real time, you shouldn't even be answering your text after a certain hour. Okay, you have to train your clients how to teach you, how to treat you. You have to teach them how to treat you. And you are only going to get the boundaries that you earn. If you are someone who makes yourself available all times of day and night, every day of the week, that your clients will come to expect it and they will bother you all the time. Okay. Do you want to limit or in any way put boundary around how you can be reached? Perhaps the better question is, what would you prefer? What's your favorite communication style? Do you want to maybe ask your clients, how do they like to be communicated with? If someone is under 50, they want text. If they're 50 to 65, maybe phone or email or voice. And if they're over 65, I promise you they want a phone call. Now I'm exaggerating, but you want to think about how you want to be reached as well as what is going to be best for your client. You know, nowadays, maybe it's all DMing. Maybe the only way you're communicating with them is through Instagram. I don't know. Professional standards. Will you represent two different buyers on the same property? It could happen that you have two different buyers who both are interested in the same property or who want to hire you to shop for them for a house in the same price range in the same neighborhood. We have agents who will not take on a client like two clients like that. They will say, I'm really sorry. I'm working for another client right now in that neighborhood who also wants a 3-bedroom in your price range. I can't possibly do that with a high ethical standard. I'm going to refer you to my colleague, Bill. Bill can help. Now, I'm not saying you guys have to do that. I'm just saying what's going to be your standard. This is a kind of dual agency that people don't think about. Two buyers on the same neighborhood. Everybody has a different way of handling it. So I gave you the first example. The other way you could say is, I'm going to take them both on. I'm not going to tell them about each other. And I'm simply going to say that I am working with other buyers. And if whatever buyer says they want to write, the first offer is the one I'm going to write. And then if that happens and you want to write on that same property, then I'm going to refer you to my colleague. Listing agents look funny at you if you write two offers for two different buyers on the same property, so don't do that. But it's legal. There's nothing technically illegal about it, but it is a dual agency and you do need to inform both parties that you're doing it. The more standard dual agency is, will you represent the buyer on your own listing? I've done it. More times than not, it's worked out, but there have been a couple of times where it blew up on me. The danger of being a dual agent on your own listing is a perception of conflict of interest. That come through for the previous example as well. How can you possibly look out for the best interests of the seller if at the same time you're trying to do the best interests of the buyer? It's legal in this state. Dual agency is legal. It means the restriction on it is that you can't tell the buyer that the seller is willing to take a higher price, and you can't tell the seller that the buyer is willing to pay more. But people do this. They double end deals all the time. Yes, question in the room.
It happens to me in Colombia once that two clients, one was the natural client because the property is a neighbor, you know, and wants to buy it. And they agreed to do the transaction with valuation.
Like an appraisal.
Yeah, an appraisal, yeah.
Yeah, so they didn't even set the price.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not the way it would work here, but that's not just about price. When I had trouble with this, it was around negotiations that occurred after the price was clarified. And so anyway, you got to be careful with it. It is not illegal. As new licensees, please check with your broker and the mentor and me before you go and take one of these on, because it's fraught with peril. Okay. How will you speak with buyers who are not pre-approved with financing, but they need a loan, but they want to go see homes? Would you show them a home? They're willing to sign a buyer rep agreement with you. Would you still show them the house if they're not pre-approved? Cynthia, no, why not? Yeah, you don't know what they're qualifying for, and why is that a problem? And okay, why do you want to know? She doesn't want to show them something they can't afford. So when you're talking to them, that's not what you say. What you say is, Mr. Buyer, I will only have two laws. I only have two rules before I can go and show you houses. The first one is that you sign this agreement with me that we're going to talk about today. But the second one is that you have your financing together. Okay. You're either a cash buyer or you're pre-approved. You have your pre-approval in place. Now, here's the reason, Mr. Buyer. It would be devastating for me if I showed you a house that you could not afford to buy. Our market moves very quickly. Our market moves very quickly. They may be taking offers as they come. They may be taking offers in a day or two, and you might fall in love with the house. And then you fall in love with the house, and I can't even write an offer for you because we're not pre-approved. That would be awful. I would hate to disappoint you like that, Mr. Buyer. So my policy is, if the financing isn't in place, we're not ready to look. In fact, Mr. Buyer, I go a step further with my buyers. I tell you, stop looking at Zillow. Stop looking at websites. Because here's another issue, Mr. Buyer. You may think you can afford $1 million house, but when you get the money looked at, maybe you can only afford an $800,000 house. Or maybe there's some credit work you need to do to be able to afford the house. So we don't want to put the cart ahead of the horse, Mr. Buyer. That's professional standards, guys. How do you speak with buyers who do not want to sign a buyer agreement with before you show them homes? So the short answer to this is you have to say, I can't show you homes because the law changed last summer, right? So you have to tell them in a nice way that, sorry, Cynthia. You have to tell them in a nice way that until they sign that agreement, you can't show them homes, but the home might be open this weekend. You can go to the open house. Okay. And that gives you an opportunity to address their objections. Why don't they want to sign the agreement with you? And there may be legitimate objections, but there may be objections that get to something that has not been established. Like if they say, well, I'm still talking to other agents, or, I don't want to make a commitment to pay you, then what has happened? You haven't established your value proposition clearly, that you're worth every penny of it. And number two, you haven't communicated to them clearly that they're not going to have to pay you if the seller does, which is going to be most cases. So you want to hear what their objection is. Okay. So if someone said they're not really comfortable signing it, so the first thing I say, that's really unfortunate. I'd love to have you as a client. I encourage you to go look at open houses. But can I ask you what your thinking is? What is it about the agreement that bothers you? I don't want to be pinned down. I want to have lots of different agents show me houses. And you can say, well, I'm sorry, I can't work that way. When a lead or a contact becomes a client, they go to a new status with me. I'm going to be pouring into them. They are going to be a client, not just a contact, and they are going to get a higher level of my attention and my service as per the action plan that I showed you. And so I just can't do it, but I do wish you well. Okay. There are open houses you can go to see homes at. And it would end there. So you just remember, you can't do it. It's actually illegal. And you can even share with that buyer, and you should know that it is not legal anymore for an agent just to show you a house. So whomever you're going to be working with, they're going to ask you to sign something, even if it's just a limited showing agreement. Now, if you do Zillow Leads, Zillow has a showing agreement that they use for all their showings for agents who work with Zillow directly as a lead service. And that showing agreement does not include a commitment to work with that agent. It is legal, apparently. I think it defeats the whole point, but it is legal. So that means that your broker might be able to provide you with similar showing agreement to allow you to show homes, but this brokerage doesn't do that. This brokerage is expecting you to get a commitment before you go show houses. Okay. In fact, most of the big brokerages are like that. All right. What are you going to put on the agreement in terms of your commission? Some of you have heard me talk about this before. So does anyone have any thoughts? The desired commission rate, what you would put on your agreement? You're going to meet with the buyer?
2.5%.
Thank you for saying that. My recommendation, that is what is pretty typical in our marketplace. You know, in some parts of our market, even that is high. But my recommendation to you guys is to put down 3%. Put down 3% because some sellers will pay you 3%. So if you do put down 2.5%, then you might be leaving money on the table, right? And what you say to the buyer is, I'm worth every penny of this 3% because of this and this and this, and I think we can get the sellers to pay it. So let's put down 3%. You probably won't have to be on the hook for anything anyway. But let me tell you this, when we get to a situation where we write an offer and we put in 3% and the seller won't pay 3%, then I'm happy to talk about what we do about that differential. So you leave the opening for a renegotiation down. Okay, but the reason you don't want to put down 2.5% is because let's suppose the seller's agent tells you, my seller really needs to get this sold. He's willing to pay buyer's agents 3%. Your agreement with your buyer is only 2.5%. You're screwed. You can't go up. You can't go the other way. So by starting at 3%, you leave open the possibility of being able to get 3%. And if you can't, your buyer might say to you, I don't want to pay that half point. The sellers agree they don't want, the seller has said they're only going to pay 2.5. So you go back to the buyer and say, yeah, you know, when we signed that agreement, I did tell you it was a possibility that they wouldn't pay the 3%. And I said we would talk about it. And I'm absolutely willing to make an allowance for that. I'll come down to 2.75%. Okay, because I'm still working very hard for you, Mr. Buyer, and I'm actually worth 3%. But in respect of, you know, what we talked about before, I'm willing to go to 2.75. That's a place. That's a negotiation. I recommend you don't just go right down to 2.5. Okay, because you're going to have this problem in a scenario where the seller counters the offer at 2%. You ask for 2.5 and the seller counters at 2. What do you do then? Your buyer's on the hook for half a point if you did a 2.5% agreement, okay? Or a full point if they did a 3% agreement. And then you can negotiate down. You have some room, you know. But if you have delivered a compelling argument with the buyer to earn their commitment up front, they'll be quite happy signing at 3%. I get things signed at 3% all the time as a buyer's agent. Okay. And I rarely ever even have a conversation about it. Now, that's me. I've been doing this 21 years. You know, I have a unique market segment and a unique client thing. So it's hard. It's easy for me to get up here and talk about it that way. But I encourage you to start at 3% like it's just the way you do business and have a conversation. Jack, do you have a question?
Oh, yes. I have been exactly thinking about the same situation. How do I explain to them that there's 3% because they're signing agreement now with signature? So how do I make them fully understand that I am totally willing to talk about it if the seller only willing to pay 2.5, like I mean they're signing, but that I would not hold them to it if the seller only pay 2.5. What should I do?
Okay, so first of all, you're right. Your initial agreement with the buyer at 3% doesn't have, it's all talk, right? It's all talk if you say, I'll talk about it later. Some buyers may not be happy with that. No, Mr. Agent, I want to talk about it now. I don't want to wait until we have a scenario. So then you say, okay, let's add an addendum that that you'll only owe me 2.75 if the seller only offers 2.5. I'll go one better. If the seller only offers, if the seller only offers 2.5, I'll do 2.75. And if the seller only offers 2.25, I'll do 2.5. So you can negotiate it up front and put it in as an amendment in the actual agreement. So that's the way you get around it up front, Jack, but I would avoid it if you can. I would say, listen, in most cases, sellers are willing to pay my fee. I've experienced it over and over again. Therefore, and Jack, you can say that our brokerage has experienced it over and over again if you haven't personally. And therefore, I don't really think there's going to be a problem here. And I'm quite happy to talk about it further if it comes up. Because remember, Jack, he can always improve his price. Your buyer who's now seeing an agent that doesn't want to pay some or all of the fee, you can say, we're going to keep it at 3%, but we're going to offer an extra quarter point or extra half a point on the offer price to get there. So the seller is netting the same amount of money. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay, good.
Yes, thank you.
All right, so you can see from this list, there are things you should be thinking about. Don't you think that if you're meeting a buyer for the first time and they were to ask you any one of these questions, that if you had an answer already, you'd look more professional? You'd look, oh, wow, have you really only been in the business 3 months? You've got this all figured out. You know, I cannot believe that you just got your license 3 months ago. You're just totally all over this. Yeah, well, I'm a professional, right? So that's why I want to talk about it with you guys now, right? Okay, next thing. Promoting key elements of the buyer representation agreement. So first of all, I don't know that all of you were able to get into the class this morning taught by, sorry. I don't know that all of you were able to get into the class this morning on the RPA and the buyer representation agreement. But I know at least one of you was. But please study this document and watch the recorded videos about this document before you meet with your client, because they may have questions for you. You can't just assume they're just going to sign it, okay? And you should make sure that you raise at least 4 components of it to talk about in your discussion in that meeting. Number 1, you must explain how you get paid. Okay, and there's lots of good paperwork on it that makes it in plain English inside the document. So it should be easy for you to explain. I would just read it. If you're not comfortable just talking about it, read it to them. How do you get paid? Number 2, non-exclusive versus exclusive representation. You want exclusive. Can anyone tell me what the difference is? Yes, Jamie. Oh, wait. Cynthia was in the class. Jamie, you weren't in the class this morning. I'm going to let Cynthia go, okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Cynthia, what's the difference? Yeah.
Exclusive is when they're actually working with you only, right? Non-exclusive means that they have other agents that they can potentially still work with, right?
Yes. But I think it's more exclusive representation means no matter who finds the property, they have to work with you. Non-exclusive means they reserve the right to work with other people if you don't find the property for them. And that's a subtle but important distinction. You don't want non-exclusive. Sign exclusive and explain to them why. You're going to be working hard for them, and it doesn't matter if they find the property. You're still in their court looking out for them, reading disclosures, helping them to understand the contract terms, helping them to negotiate, helping them manage the escrow. You're not done till the escrow closes, by the way. And your mentors will help you with your first few escrows. And if they're not, you come talk to me, but they will. A third thing, what does buyer agency include and not include? Please make sure you have that conversation. What are some, we all know, I just went through a litany of things that buyer agency includes. Can anyone tell me a few things that we don't do that they might think we would do? Any guesses? Were any of you in my class last week that I did on the Friday afternoon class I did? Okay, taxes. You are not a CPA. That's 1. Don't ever pretend to be. Okay, do not give tax advice. Number 2, legal advice. You are not a lawyer. Don't go reading and trying to interpret contracts you're not familiar with. You're going to see paperwork in your real estate career that is unfamiliar to you, that has not provided by zip forms. And you're going to say, what the frig is this? It's not your job to go over it with your client and interpret it. You're not lawyers. Send them to a real estate attorney if it's necessary to understand a document that you're not familiar with. Those are the two big ones. Did you guys know that we're not supposed to be experts on the schools? We're supposed to refer them out for school-based inquiries. We're supposed to refer them out for permit history, and pulling permits at the city is on the owners of the sellers and not on, or the it's not on our job to go to the city and pull permits. There's a bunch of things. Okay. So you want to have the conversation. Okay. Your expertise is helping them find, as a buyer's agent, helping them find property, helping them negotiate to buy the property, helping them manage the escrow to get the money, get the property at the end of the day, not to do any of those other things. Okay. Which doesn't mean you should be unknowledgeable. On Friday, I taught a class on property taxes. We talked about Prop 19. We talked about Prop 13. If you didn't get a chance to go to that, it's on YouTube channel. And, you should know some highlights, but never give specific tax advice. Okay. Mutual cancellation rights. Make sure you and them talk to the buyer about their rights of cancellation. When can they cancel? How do you cancel? What's this 30-day business that's in the contract? Okay. Again, study it first. Make sure you know. And if you don't understand something in the contract, what do you do? All right. So let's see. Jamie, you go through the buyer rep contract, you go to the class, then something comes up either in a meeting or in your review of the document. You don't know what to make of it. What do you do?
I would say they ask, what is this part of the contract? I'd say, I'm actually not sure. Let me call my mentor or my mentor, because they handle all the back end of the contract stuff, right?
That's a great answer, Jamie. And you are right, but incomplete.
Okay.
If you're with them, I'm going to get that answer for you by the end of the day or first thing in the morning. That's a great question. And make it seem like you should play it up a little bit, like, I've never had that question before. What a great question. Don't betray the fact that you're new and that's why you don't know, right? Anyway, in all seriousness, you have other resources, Jamie, and everybody besides your mentor. Who else at the brokerage can help you with
The broker of record?
Yes, or the designated broker. In East
Right.
Bay, that's Eddie Moran. In the peninsula, is Jean Gallagher.
Yeah.
Who else?
Maybe my productivity coach.
Yeah, maybe. Yes, of course. So if you can't reach your mentor, you absolutely should consider me your second contact.
Okay.
Stephen, I can't reach the mentor. I've got to get this out in the next hour. If you have a minute. Now, the more you make the frame tight, the more you get people upset. So try not to leave things to the last minute as a rule. But if you can't reach your mentor, maybe they're traveling over the weekend or something, and something comes up in this or in the RPA, don't hesitate to reach out to me. The worst I'm going to say to you is, I'm sorry, I can't help you, but talk to Bill or Susan or Fred, who is ready to help when I'm not available. Okay. So discuss those things. That will also make you look like a professional, right? Okay. So some other things. How do you differentiate yourself from other buyer's agents they might meet with, or further help get that value proposition across to them in that meeting? What are some ways you can do it? You want to go above and beyond the typical agent, which in our context today is a non-Keller Williams trained agent, or an untrained new licensee, right? Whatever. Buyer guides. You want to assume, the natural tendency is to assume that people are just gone to Google or gone to ChatGPT and looked it all up themselves. Don't make that assumption. Not everyone you meet with has done that or even wants to. One of the reasons you're talking to them, they're talking to you, is because you're the expert. So offer them, if they're a first-time buyer, offer them a buyer guide in digital or printed form that they can read. Again, if they're over 65, they want written material. If they're under 50 to 65, they might want both printed and a digital PDF. And if they're under 50, they don't want a PDF. They want an interactive display with a lot of pictures and graphics. Again, I'm exaggerating. Know your audience, right? Pre-meeting buyer questionnaire. This has been very successful with me. You want to get a good first impression to a person you're going to meet with? Send them a Google form in advance saying, here's my questions to help me prepare to meet with you. Most of the time when I send this, almost 95% of the time they do it before the meeting, and it's very helpful to me to get a hint of what we're going to be talking about. By the way, if anyone wants mine, I'm happy to share my Google form. Shoot me an email and I'll send you mine. What about a buyer loyalty agreement? I've used these with great success over the years. It's not the full contract. It's basically a pledge. Mr. Buyer, I'm going to look out for you. You're going to look out for me, and we're going to be honest with each other. These things create an ambience. They create an environment in the conversation that may not have come through already. It makes you look not just like a professional, but like a good person. So I love them. Okay. What about service guarantees and incentives? What if you were to say to your buyer, I will offer you a $1,000 credit for the next 3 deals on each of the next 3 deals you do with me after this one. Because the buyer may want to invest in real estate after they buy this home. What if you were to say to them, Mr. Buyer, I am so serious about my communication strategy with you that if you don't get a text, email, or voice call from me each and every Wednesday, and you call me on it, I'm going to give you a $500 credit at close of escrow. Service guarantees, incentives, these things, again, set you apart from the crowd and make you look more professional. I promise you, 95% of agents do not do these things, or they don't do all of them. I do all of these, but most agents do maybe one or do none. And then we talked about this already. What if you were to offer I don't do this one, offer a menu of different service levels for different commission amounts? The only problem with this one is that the brokerage limits how low you can go. So we don't have a discount offering at this brokerage. So I don't think this one adds a lot of value between 2.5 and 3.5 for a buyer. It depends. If you're going to be doing something special for the buyer that's over and above normal service, but is still real estate, I don't know, maybe finding them referrals in 5 different cities, I don't know what it would look like. You could maybe ask for more money for that. I don't know. Those are some ways you can distinguish yourself. I've had great success with all of them, but the bottom one, which I haven't tried. And by the way, guys, this is only limited by your imagination. I have an agent in Fremont who, she's no longer in the program. She graduated. When she does a showing of property to her buyers, she brings out a whole tea service. And she offers them, she turns it into an outing. She turns the showing into an experience. You could offer something like that. People love to have experiences. This is a sample of a loyalty agreement that I've used in the past. It doesn't talk about money. It just talks about honesty and collaboration. So these are a couple of script starters for you guys. I'm not your typical buyer's agent. Here's why. Many folks aren't aware of everything I do to help my clients. May I share my list and have a list? Ideally 4 or 5 pages long with bullet points on it of all the things you've ever done for any buyer, anytime ever, or that everyone tells you should be part of the service level. In fact, not on Zip Forms, on the California Association of Realtors website, they published one last year that had like 200 items on it. Not all of them applicable in California, but still. What if you offered VIP client status? How would you define VIP? What does it mean to be a exclusive client? Like what does that mean? What is the level of service you offer a VIP that they don't get? It's just a contact. That's the thought. Exclusivity is my business practice with buyer clients. So that's something to say, don't even let it be on the table that you would go non-exclusive. All fees are negotiable, but I charge 3%, and here's why. So just some ideas of how to get into the conversation. I encourage you to role play it with your script practice partners, your conversation partners. And I'm happy to do a role play. If you want to role play with me, you can just call me and set up a one-on-one. And you can also role play all of this, by the way, with the AI. The ChatGPT has a role play mode. Now, there's a real problem with doing role play with a machine or with even on the phone. Even the phone is better. With a human being, if you are going to do this with real human beings in the future, you don't want to do the role play beyond a certain level with an AI because there's so much non-verbal communication that happens in a human dynamic than happens in a text environment. So you lose so much that helps you to determine what you want to say next. So the top form is in person, like Luis and Cynthia are here with me right now. The second best form is you guys on Zoom because you can see me. I can only see one of you, but that's okay. This is a class. But if we were doing a role play, you would have your camera on in 99% of the cases, right? Third is telephone or audio only is perhaps the way we should talk about it these days. Nothing wrong with it. You can still pick up clues by their pauses, their hesitations, the way their voice rises and lowers. But text for a role play practice, I'm skeptical about its utility. Time is precious. Make your role plays count. I should have a slide on role plays. Okay. Compromises. You're in a negotiation with them. They want you to they're not happy with the buyer rep agreement. 3 things you can do. Shorten its length. It's a 3-month agreement. Make it a week. Put yourself on approval. Mr. Buyer, I'm so confident that you're going to be happy with me. Let's just make this a week agreement and let's renew it after if you like me. So you shorten its length. Tell them, you know what? I know you're a little bit nervous that you have a friend who's in Marin County or in San Francisco City. Let's just make this for our county. Let's just limit our scope. I'm only going to be your agent in Santa Clara County, not in San Mateo or in San Francisco, for example. You can even make this specific to several properties, one or many properties. And that's a possibility too. You might be representing a buyer who wants to buy his neighbor's house. Then you've got one property and just one property in the whole agreement. That makes things really clear for them and, lowers perhaps their stress around signing it. So just some ideas here. If you are going to negotiate on price, go down slowly. Don't be jumping down to the lowest number right away. Okay. You might end up there, but don't start there. Okay. All right. Any questions? How are we doing for time? I don't even look at a watch. What time is it? Oh, wow. 5 minutes. Wow. I ate up a whole hour of your time, guys. All right. Any questions? Yeah. You mean this? So I should put this up here. This QR code is for this presentation. If you click on this QR code, if you're, you should be able to get a copy of the presentation. Jack, you don't need to raise your hand. You just get to talk.
I would like to ask you, you say there's a Fremont agent turn the experience into tea experience. So they do a afternoon tea thing in the open house. Do they charge the people to come or they just host it?
Sorry, what are you talking about?
You say there's used to be an Oakland PC Class 8, no, sorry, not Oakland, a Fremont PC Class agent who turned the open house into an afternoon tea experience, right?
No, not open house. Showings. After the client signed with them, every time they showed them property, they would make it an afternoon tea. They would bring tea and sweets and snacks to the car.
Or to the car, okay. So they kept getting chit chat after the showings.
I don't know what happened after the showings. She probably published the showings in a beautiful binder. I think she did do that. The 3 or 4 properties she was going to show, she put them in a binder with all this accessory information. She just made the outing to go look at houses special. Now, Jack, that doesn't mean you couldn't provide tea and drinks and snacks at an open house. Agents do that all the time.
Okay, thank you. Just to get some ideas.
Yeah. The more you differentiate yourself, the more people will remember you, hopefully for good, not for bad. All right. Anything else? Any other questions? Has this been helpful? Okay.
Yes.
So please, if you want a copy of the presentation, let me put that back up again. There's the QR code in the center of the screen, and you can order it. All right. Thank you, guys. Have a great long weekend. Happy 4th.